So welcome, if you're just joining us for our panel. Lovely to have so many people with us. So I'm Emma Sue, and I just want to quickly, before we begin, just to suggest that if you are attending as a guest, that you might want to have your camera off and your mic off, simply because we want to make it a panel and it's just easier to see who's who kind of thing. And a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, welcome, and this is the first time we're running a panel like this. I know from attending these kinds of things face to face in the sort of distant past, they can be really informative, sometimes entertaining, hopefully fun, and quite lively discussion. So as a guest to the panel and taking part, we welcome you using the chat to, if you've got any questions you want to ask any of our panelists, simply put it into the chat. Isabella, who is off camera at the moment, is going to be keeping an eye on the chat. So she will be kind of looking at your questions and making sure that we know what the questions are. There'll be plenty of time for the Q&A where you can ask questions. So there's Isabella there. And she'll be looking after the chat. So we've got some fabulous guests with us today, and each is an incredible female business entrepreneur. That wasn't planned, but that's how it's turned out when we're inviting people to come be on this panel. And each of these panelists has got a great story to tell and an amazing business. And I want to kick off just by asking and inviting each of our guests to introduce themselves. So I'd love you to tell our guests with us today about your business, what you do, and how long you've been in business for. So let's start with Verity de Jong. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us about your business?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Verity, the founder of Bed Cooks. I launched the brand in lockdown, and I dye table linens naturally using leftover food materials like onion skins, avocado stones, spinach, anything sort of like that.
Great, thank you. Natasha, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly? Tell us about your business.
Yeah. So I run an online stationery shop called Coco Natasha, based on positive, uplifting stationery, greeting cards, planners, clothing. I started probably in 2015, but I've been full-time since 2017.
Great, thank you. And Raffaella.
So my name is Raffaella, and I'm the co-founder of Brick Chocolate. And we are a very small independent chocolate maker studio, and we work on replicas of architectural materials, using chocolate as a main material to express ourselves.
I mean, I have to say, I think these are three of my favorite things: chocolate, linen. I love linen, and stationery. I just love all those three things. I'm happy with those. Okay, so I want to set out my initial statement for the panel. And lots of new businesses have started during the last couple of years. And that's partly in response to the pandemic, but also people being out of work, being made redundant, doing something differently. And also, I think, arising out of innovation. So maybe recognizing that there is a need to do something differently. So it's not necessarily related to the pandemic, but just to kind of disrupt an industry, do it differently, whether that's a service or a product. And I think we are also shopping with a lot more small independent businesses. And I want to start off with a few statistics. So small businesses, and they're referred to in the kind of the jargon that they're referred to with is SMEs, and SMEs simply means small to medium-sized enterprises, but they account for a whopping 3/5 of employment and around half of turnover in the UK, in the private sector. So total employment in small businesses is around 16.3 million. And that's 60% of total employees. Turnover around 2.3 trillion pounds. So big numbers. However, you've got to think about it in context, because employment in small businesses, when it's referred to as small businesses, it's about, you could have 0 employees all the way up to 50 employees. So that's, you know, the kind of backdrop to be thinking about. In 2020 and 2021, many new independent businesses started. But actually, interestingly, when I was looking at this, because you see a kind of steady increase year on year with the growth of small businesses, but in 2020 and 2021, there was actually a decrease in small businesses, which means that, I looked into this a bit more, it means that although many new businesses were started in this time frame, many independent businesses also folded and they went bust. So, you know, and again, you know, when we're talking about small businesses and SMEs, those numbers I've just mentioned is referring to businesses which could have up to 50 employees. Actually, most businesses, small businesses, have no employees. So, you know, a few more stats here, you know, 1.4 million have employees. But 4.2 million have no employees. It's just that person on their own. And many are not necessarily companies, they're sole traders. So that's enough of the stats, but there's one final very important stat. So while it may not be, I mean, obviously there are hurdles and there are things that you have to do to start a business, but it's relatively easy in the UK to start a business. I mean, in some countries you've got, you know, huge amounts of bureaucracy, all kinds of things. So it's relatively, you know, it's not incredibly challenging to start a business in terms of what you have to do, but it's quite another thing to make it successful. And in the UK, nearly 60% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years. Okay, so we've got a mix of businesses with us today, and I thought I'd start by asking our panel their thoughts on this. So, you know, longer established businesses. So we've got some who've been in business for longer than 5 years. What's helped you survive past 5 years? And maybe Verity, we're probably going to ask you what you are going to be your key challenges to get past 5 years, because you're one of the I don't want to call it a pandemic business, but you know, you're one of the newer independent businesses.
Yeah.
So maybe if we could start with you, Raffaella, what's your thoughts on this, that, you know, so many fail within the first 5 years, and what's been, you know, what's helped your business survive past 5 years?
So I think there is a very interesting distinction to be made. You spoke about freelancing, self-employed, and small companies being just one person. So I think this is, you know, the key difference in the survival is just how scalable is a business when you open it. So I think one of the biggest challenges, so I think, you know, one of the biggest challenges is, as I said, the scalability. So is starting from passion is a huge drive. At times it can also be a bit of a bias when approaching the actual practicalities of a business. So I think I have been very lucky because the co-founder of Break, Kia, is the creative, and I look more into the practicalities or the logistics and the administration. So I think it's important to understand the balance between your passion, your drive, your objectives, but also the strains that are bombarding you from outside in terms of daily life challenges. So I think to go past a number, you know, 3 or 5 years, what is needed is a rather, you know, I wouldn't say cold hard approach, but you just have to separate your head from your heart and make sometimes difficult choices.
Thank you. Verity, I want to ask you, listening to Raffaella, so your business is really quite new. What do you think are going to be some challenges for you to get past 5 years?
Gosh, I think because my business is still sort of young and evolving, it's still going to take some time. Obviously, I launched in lockdown, which was probably not the easiest time to launch, but also I think had there not been the pandemic, I don't know whether I would have launched as well. So I hope to sort of maintain the business and grow it organically, because with my business I'm sort of trying to maintain a quality across all the products because it is naturally dyed, and also I want to stay genuine to the brand. Because I only use leftover foods and forage plants, it does take time, and I'm hopeful that sort of as I grow that I will be able to obviously take on people to help me. At the moment it is just me, but I'm just hopeful that, you know, it's doing quite well now, and hopeful that the next sort of couple of years it will continue to get better and I will be able to grow and also encourage other people to start their own businesses as well.
I mean, I think that is one of the big challenges, isn't it, to go past you know, so you're the founder, it's your passion, it's your thing, but actually in order to grow you need to bring in more resource on board, more people, and that's always a kind of tension between at what point do you do that, and
yeah, and also having sort of, I make everything in my own flat as well, so I don't actually have a studio, so the studio is where I live.
Yes.
So there is that kind of aspect of when will I take it out of the flat, you know, when will it be too small to actually have all the linens hanging over the banisters. Like there will hopefully be a chance where it will grow, and that's obviously what I'm aiming to do, is to find space. But it's obviously there's money involved in that, and you have to sort of, if it is just yourself making everything, dyeing everything, doing all your PR, marketing it, doing all the website, it is a lot of work, but it's easier just to be on one roof at the moment until I can, you know, get people to help me.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it, because one can now create, you know, quite beautiful looking websites and everything, you know, it can give the impression, I think, to somebody visiting a website that this is a much bigger business than maybe it really is. So there's, you know, you kind of get behind some of, you know, you go to a website and you can easily assume, oh, this is a big business, and actually it could just be one person. Raffaella, I just want to come back to you. So with Brick, at what point did you go into premises, or, you know, were you at the beginning making chocolate sort of in the kitchen?
Yes, so we started from the Kia started in our kitchen, that we moved everything in my kitchen because it was slightly bigger, and so we moved from one kitchen to the other for a few months, and just to be quite close to Verity. So we signed a contract for a kitchen in East London, literally 2 weeks before the pandemic. So we had been sort of saving and trying to be, I mean, as planned as possible, but of course, bigger factors cannot be accounted at times. So what we did, we just moved in, so the pandemic hit, and with food at times, working from home has a you know, sort of downside, because you have to be inspected. So there are a lot of I mean, there is legislation to be respected. So say about a year and a half into having the business and having formalized it, we decided to get the premises. As mentioned, wasn't the best time, but it was the best time actually, looking backwards, because I think that could have not, we wouldn't have done it otherwise. I mean, upon reflection, you know, the drive that the pandemic gave us was a huge plus.
Yeah, that's interesting as well. That's so, how the pandemic changes what you do and how you do it. So Natasha, let's ask you. So what's your response to, you've been in business since 2015, so you are past the 5-year mark. So what's helped you get past there?
Well, in 2015, I was part-time. So I had a full-time had a full-time job as a graphic designer and did this on the side for 2 years. So that helped build the safety net that I could have in the background. So just like a bunch of savings that I had until I went full-time freelance in 2017. And I'll be exactly 5 years in May. So unless something drastic happens between now and then, hopefully everything will be okay. But I think for me, coming from a graphic design background, how I've sort of stayed afloat in the last 5 years is sort of through adapting what I make and sell. So I started off by creating art prints and watercolor paintings. And then I graduated from uni in graphic design and I started doing logo designs and branding and websites. And then I moved on to wedding stationery. And then during the pandemic, like you mentioned, a lot of new businesses started up. And I actually make labels and stickers and logo stickers. And the logo stickers in 2020 were my best sellers. They were the bread and butter of everything. So they kept me going through 2020 and 2021. And now it's moved on to greeting cards and wholesale and clothing and more of making like a brand for myself rather than being just doing what society sort of wants me to make. So it's just been about adapting and seeing what is needed.
And is it just you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just me. I would love to have a team around me. Well, this week, actually, I have my mother, my father, and my friend coming over to help me pack orders. So
Okay.
it's a bit crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think this is something I think that small businesses really do struggle with, is at what point do you expand, whether it's physically in terms of the space that you're using or whether it's through bringing people on more people on board, and to what extent do you want to grow. There's that whole thing, like how big do you want the business to be, because you can have a small independent business and make a living, and that's fine. And I don't know whether anyone here watches Dragon's Den. I quite like Dragon's Den, and I do watch it, and I think they always make that distinction between somebody who is kind of doing that, following their passion and working and making a living, and the business which can become bigger and therefore be invested in. And I always think that's a really interesting kind of tension between those two things. So I want to ask you now, and I'll just invite whoever would like to respond to this, but this is something that I think about a lot with my own business. How much of your business and what you do is linked to you personally rather than to the brand? So how much is linked to you personally rather than to your brand? Whoever would like to respond to that, you don't each have to if you don't want to, but just to see what what do you think of that?
I think I've sort of become my brand as I've like grown with it. I think Coco Natasha has been a way to push me out of my shell and my comfort zone. So I'll just like use my Instagram as an example. My personal Instagram, I never post on, but my Coco Natasha one, it's all me, my brand, my colors. I show my face like easily now on stories and YouTube. But before I started this, I was very, very shy and I would never do anything like this. So I think yeah, I sort of my brand is very much me.
So what happens then if and when you expand?
I don't know. I've tried to separate myself. It just doesn't work for me. It hasn't worked previously.
Yeah, I think that can be really that can be challenging as well. Like how do you because it's linked with it. And of course now with social media and everything that happens on social media, there is this kind of I see that so much, this whole link to the person and that what they do, and it's kind of you and the brand wrapped up into one, really, you know.
I think people buy from people as well. So if I'm on Instagram a lot, and if I see people explaining what they're doing behind the scenes and how they do it, I am more likely to buy something from them because I feel like I know them.
Yes. Do you think so? This is anyone on the panel who'd like to respond to this, but just in keeping on the same theme of linked to you personally rather than the brand. Do you think it's possible to sustain that over the life of a business, that it's linked to the person and the person becomes a brand? How does one sustain that?
There's people on Instagram that I aspire to be like. I think it's hard for me because my name is in the brand name. So I think it has to have that personal element somewhere.
Yes.
If I was to get a team, hopefully one day, I wouldn't expect to outsource designers or illustrators. I would still like to keep all of that myself. The things I would need like help with and having a team would be like packing and admin and emails. So the stuff that isn't so me, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just made me think of because I was thinking about what you said about the name being part of the brand, and I suddenly thought of Emma Bridgewater, and that's that is her, but actually it's become a brand. So even a person has become, it's become a brand. So it is possible to do that. So it can work really well. Verity or Raffaella, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think that, as Natasha, I think it's very important to create a connection with people. I think she's right. People buy from people. So I think it's not necessarily only one person. It's just the idea you create a community, and that your brand is just almost like an amplifier for a community of people. They are looking for the same values, same things. So what we, for example, at Brick, we have 2 girls working with us in the kitchen, and we just make sure that they get exposure as much as we do, because I think it's very important. Brick is not one person only. It started with 2 people, but it will progress with other people, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think perhaps as well because you've got a name that's separate from you.
Correct.
I think that can make it, that's
more. Yes, and that was intentional for us.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about challenges. So to each of you, what have been, if you had to sort of sum up what have been maybe some of the main challenges you've faced as a small business, and how you've overcome them. So just kind of thinking back over the time that you've been in business. I know there would have been a lot of challenges, different challenges, but if you had to kind of, pinpoint some big challenges that you've had and how you overcame those challenges. Verity, do you want to maybe?
Sure.
Tell us? Yeah.
So I think obviously I launched in lockdown, and one of my biggest strains probably was launching a product that, in lockdown when everyone is sort of on their phones and, on their computers, and with mine, it's you want to feel it, you want to touch it, you want something that's tangible. So it's hard to sort of promote a product that is best seen in the flesh. So I think I struggled to sort of take, the best angles, the best pictures, the best sort of imagery that I could really sell the products to the consumers, to anyone, to sort of see what I do. So it was also a bit of me sort of getting around all this new technology that I wasn't aware of, and how people use, I haven't done TikTok, but people use TikTok, and now more so in lockdown, and it's sort of adapting yourself to different posts, different, you know, ways that other people do things. So that was a big thing for me in lockdown. But also with what I make, it's a time frame. So because it's all made by hand, it takes a long time, and the process from start to finish can take about 3 weeks. So I've had to sort of, every day I'm sort of like a factory, so there's something going on now, whereas before it was sort of, I try it, see if it works, and wait, whereas now it's continuous. So I have a flow going, which I didn't have before.
So your business is definitely growing.
Well, it's growing with just me, but it's hopefully taking off. I've got new styles now, and I think, you know, it's taken some time to get used to the product as well, and learning, because I'm still learning as I'm making, and I'm sure everyone does as they grow their business as well.
Yes, thank you. Natasha, what have been some of the challenges for you?
So I think currently I did a trade show very recently, my second ever trade show. And for those who don't know, these are like events where you go and show your stock to retailers, and they can buy from you to stock in their shops. And I've had a few little orders since then, but I've actually had one huge order right now that I am working on. That's for my parents, and my friend is currently helping me. So I don't ask for help that often. I'm very happy to do it all by myself. I know what I'm doing and how I do it. But in terms of when things get this big and overwhelming, I don't think we should be afraid to ask for a little bit of help. So I usually send out a couple of planners and stationery a week. But right now, downstairs in my living room, there's like 3,000 planners and boxes everywhere. So it's just keeping things clean and having a system, like a packing system between us all, and figuring out what's the best, most efficient way to do this, to be shipped out and packaged and everything done perfectly, I hope.
Yes. Gosh, yes. I mean, how fantastic that you've got your family all around you to help you. But I can see that's a big challenge, because as you grow and you get sort of bigger and bigger orders, you know, then that's, you know, what do you then do? And what, you know, you'll be at a point where you need to take people on and all of that. So yeah.
I would hope so. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. If this hopefully was to continue, I would have to look at other areas for my studio and bigger, because this is just my spare bedroom at the moment.
Yes. And Raffaella,
I think that, you know, from also what the Verity and Natasha said, I think for me is the multitasking. So 1 minute you are the logistic manager, the second you are the marketing, the photographer, the stylist, you wash and blaze, and then of course with food, you know, there are endless, you know, problems with ingredients that are coming from different regions, and now there is Brexit. So sometimes I think for me, what, you know, the ladies said earlier on is the adapting to be everything in under one roof, that probably has been the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity from a personal point of view as well.
Yes. So yeah, being adaptable and being flexible is key, isn't it? I think at this point I just want to introduce a little bit what I do, because I know some of the people in the audience won't necessarily know what Unimenta does and what we do, and that'll lead on to my next question that I want to ask you, and also just to encourage our guests to type into the chat if you have any questions, because we will be doing a Q&A shortly, and you can ask any questions you like of any of the panelists. But my business is very much about training and developing skills, and it has started with me and with the book that I've written. So it's all about developing skills such as adaptability, but also critical thinking, empathy, integrity, optimism, being proactive, being resilient, and I've sort of fluctuated from having a team, and then that changed during the pandemic, and now I'm sort of gone back to doing a lot of things myself. So the business has been going for about 10 years, but it's gone through different stages and different phases, and I think that's what businesses just do. And I think we're about to go through another expansion phase shortly, happily. But my business is all about skills and qualities, and how do you develop those? So my next question is what qualities do you think you need to be successful as a business long term? So, you know, going for it longer than 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. What do you think are the key qualities that you need to be successful? Natasha, maybe we could start with you.
I think it's probably a bit cliche to say, but the passion, I don't think the passion should always be there, whether like I'm making wedding stationery or I change to clothing, it's all going to be in the design area. So I think as long as the passion and the excitement is fresh, I think that's what will help me go further into the future, rather than, I don't want to let things go stale and become bored by my business. So I'm always looking for the next thing to make and create and design. So I think just excitement, really.
Great. I think that's fantastic. And actually you are doing that, aren't you? Because you keep changing what you're doing, and that probably motivates you.
Yeah.
Keeps you wanting to do it. I can see that. Verity, what sort of
I think you have to have perseverance. I think when you hit sort of a rough spot in your business, whether it's an idea or consumers aren't buying it, you have to persevere. You have to just continue. And I think if you stop, then you'll lose momentum. So I think just keep going, and hopefully it will, it will work out. But if you stop, then you might lose out on something that could be great.
And perseverance is I mean, a lot of people think of perseverance as, you just keep going, which it is. You just keep going. Actually, it's also about constantly trying out different approaches. That
Definitely.
didn't work. Okay, I need to do it differently. That I did that, and I didn't do it. I could have done it differently. I could have done it in a better way, or people didn't respond to that well. I've got to change it. So it's this kind of being able to handle all those failures, because we all have failures in business, and to have such a belief and passion about what you do that you can keep going and keep doing things differently. And
definitely.
that's the perseverance, I think. Yeah. Raffaella?
I think, obviously, I think passion and perseverance would have been also my first calls. And I think passion, possibly more than anything. But one thing in the years I learned is also the ability to pause sometimes and to listen. Because I think that might not be a skill, might not be, but it's something very useful at times, just when everything is really, sort of coming to you, in the worst way possible, is just detaching and pausing for a moment and putting things in perspective.
I like that. I mean, we've actually got 3 P's here. We've got passion, we've got perseverance, we've got pause. Actually, we've got a 4th one, perspective. So those are that's quite nice. I quite like that. So the next question I want to ask you is how do you expand your business without losing sight of quality and passion? So I'm thinking now, so that I want each of you to imagine for a moment, let's fast forward 5 years from now, okay, and you've now got several employees, you've got several people, maybe doing a little bit of what you do, or helping you to do what you do. How would that work without losing sight of quality and that passion that you've all said is so important?
I would hope that it would if anything, improve the quality. For example, I being only one pair of eyes, I feel like I sometimes miss things and make mistakes, and I get so annoyed at myself. And I would hope that having extra pairs of eyes around me, the quality would, I think, improve, because if I don't pick up on something, and there's been times before that I haven't picked up on a mistake, I would hope that somebody else would pick up on it and say, look, this can be done a bit better. How about we try doing this? That's what I hope will happen for me.
Yes. Yes. Verity? Or
Yeah,
okay.
sure. I think obviously with what I do is slow. It's a natural dyeing is a slow process. So hopefully the quality remains consistent across the board. Obviously bringing in other people may may be tricky, but also if people don't understand what you're doing and how the process is. But I again agree. I think that when you have other people with you, there may be struggles with them understanding the products, but at the same time, those can be overcome and the quality will get stronger with time. So I think initially bringing on people might be hard at first, but once the training sort of is done, I think the quality later on will be stronger as a whole, because everyone understands everything.
I suppose it's also for you especially, I think, with what you do, it's about setting up those really strong processes and systems that you've decided are how things should be. I guess, so that's really kind of streamlined, and I can imagine I'm imagining a factory and lots of machines and things.
The dreams we can all dream. Yeah.
Well, 5 years from now, it could be. Yeah. Raffaella?
I think, like Verity, I think it's about training. For me, the biggest asset in growing a company in a stable manner is the way you train people and the assumptions you might make, because one big mistake we all make, and I made in the past, is that because I'm very passionate, because I know what I'm doing, it doesn't necessarily mean I know how to explain it. So sometimes it is to accept that there may be training is a process, and it requires time, and it requires resources that you have to invest to grow the quality of your company.
So I'm just aware of the time, and I've got one last question, and then I want to open it up to our guests so that they can ask questions if they would like. So this question is about money and financing your business, and I'm just curious to know how you, because obviously as you grow and expand, you have to take risks financially, and you've got to decide how much you're going to invest of your turnover, of your money, or maybe take loans out, or I don't know. But how has that been for each of you? So how do you finance your business, and what do you anticipate going forward? So for example, maybe are you planning to get a loan? Would you get a loan? Would you prefer to keep everything in-house, as it were, financially? Would you be prepared to take investment? What are your thoughts about that? Just kind of, I know there's like several questions in that one question, but it's all about kind of finances and money. And maybe whilst we are discussing this aspect, if I could encourage our guests, our listeners, to type any questions they have in the chat, but we will make some time just at the end if people do have any questions. So finances, whoever would like to start with that one.
The thought of a loan scares me, but I think with my business, I didn't have to spend that much to start it up. Being a designer, most of my things were digital, so all I needed was a computer, my pen, tablet, or anything that I can draw with, and that was it. Like a printer. Over time, I've invested in better printers, better ink, better paper, more materials. And now I'm investing in clothing, but I do it, my business has grown very, very slowly. And I think that's because I wait until I have the funds available before I invest in a new product or anything like that.
So that's interesting. So that could mean that your business grows slowly. It could mean that you start to turn over more, and then you think, oh, maybe I'll reinvest some of that money back into the business. Why do loans scare you?
I wouldn't know what to do. I just like to keep it simple. I've earned this much, so I'll spend this much on a new product.
Yes. Yeah. Verity, Rafaela?
So with the new year, everything sort of has gone up with price. So I buy linen from Ireland, and that's gone up dramatically this year, and obviously I'm sure it will continue to. And if you buy products from obviously Europe as well, Brexit, so there's obviously going to be struggles with financing that, but at the moment my overheads are quite low, and because I work at home it's okay. But I think if I was to move to a larger premises, then I would potentially need to borrow some money, because I would need some money behind that, because I would obviously be moving everything away from where I live.
And do you think there's enough support from the government for small businesses? Would you be able to get an attractive loan, for example?
I'm not sure. I think I haven't obviously looked too into it at the moment. I think obviously it's something I need to think about as the business gets bigger. I think there are obviously struggles with lots of businesses are looking for loans as well. So you have to sort of make your business more desirable, I guess, for them to offer you a loan. So there's that to consider as well. There's a lot of hurdles, I guess, but hopefully it will work out if I need it.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Rafaela?
And I think the finance for a business is always a very itchy and a very difficult topic, because different industries might have different needs. For example, our overheads are very high because we have to have a kitchen machinery, and we buy the ingredients. As Verity said, prices have skyrocketed. Some of our materials have a 3 to 12 weeks delay, for example, in delivery. So, and we head into Easter, we have a seasonality. So we buy before we cash in. So it's at times it's not easy to maintain a cash flow that is super healthy, and it surely keeps me awake at night. The overall flow, of money in and out. What I found is that reputation in the industry has helped a lot. So I've always been a very good payer, and I've always made a point to be consistent in my actions. So this has helped me to get credit sometimes with my suppliers when I didn't have the right to have credit, but they just trusted the person because I've always been on time. And this has made a huge difference for a small business like ours.
Yes, that whole thing around when you get paid, and having credit is a big thing, and cash flow is everything.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's also about be discerning within your customers. Some of them you just have to learn to say no. I cannot do it now. We are too small. For as appealing as it might be, this will ruin me because I have to invest so much to create an order, and I don't have enough financial backup. So it's being a lesson also to say no at times to grow the business.
Yes. I want to thank you all so much for everything that you've contributed to the discussion today. I hope our guests have found it of interest. We would love to open this up now for questions that you may have from our panelists or for myself. Isabella, Isabella will make sure that everybody who's come along today, that you have information about the businesses that you've been hearing about. So we'll make sure that all the websites, everything relevant is there. And Isabella, could you tell us if there are any questions, and the opportunity to invite questions from our audience?
Of course, yeah, thank you for such great sessions. So we've got a question from Gemma Rothwell. She said, how do you keep motivated when things aren't going the way you hoped, especially when people around you don't see the vision?
Good question.
It's tricky, that one, actually. I think obviously some people are going to have different views to what you make, if it's something that you make yourself or you're getting produced. I think maybe they're not the right customer for you as well. Maybe you're targeting the wrong people. I think you can't sort of let it get you down. As much as someone says no to you, then there will be someone that says yes. So I think it's just sort of keeping yourself motivated and just telling yourself that wasn't right. Let's try someone else, a different stockist. Maybe someone else might be interested, and maybe, you never know, if you introduce a new product, that supplier or that stockist might be interested. So a no doesn't mean no forever. It just means not now, I think, is what you have to tell yourself.
That's a great answer. Does anybody else want to answer that question as well?
I think starting out, there was a lot of people that didn't see the same vision as me. They would, I think it was like close friends and family, they'd be like, why don't you draw this instead or design that instead? This is what I think will sell. And I think I'm just a very stubborn person, and I like to prove people wrong. And so I just didn't listen to them. And it's the same people are around me, and they're like, yeah, you were right. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. So sometimes you just got to trust your gut and prove people wrong. And if it doesn't work, just try something else.
That's really great advice. Raffaella, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Natasha. I think sometimes you just have to listen to your gut because it's the only way forward. You know what you can do, and sometimes it might not be immediately visible to people close to you. So sometimes you just have to be faithful to your instinct. I think I just, praise that.
Thank you. That's great. There's another question just come in from Sharif. Question to Raffaella. What surprised you most in the chocolate industry? What are some of the big mistakes you've made?
Oh my God. Yeah, well, I have a list. So I think that, the chocolate industry has evolved. I've been in the chocolate industry for about 24 years. So I think I've seen a big evolution within the industry. Some of the biggest mistakes I made were about what I said before. A big, glamorous client comes in. It really shows they can give you visibility, is super good to have them on your company CV, and guess what? They don't pay at the end because it's all about the glory. So I think these trusting these bling bling, world at times might lead to fatal mistakes for you and for the people that work with you, that put under unnecessary stress.
That's great. I'm just wondering if Verity and Natasha, is there anything that surprised you about your industries, and maybe something that's really surprised you as it's gone on?
I think with natural dyeing, I've found there's a larger community, obviously, in America that do it a lot, and it is growing. And I think through lockdown, lots of people were sort of tie-dyeing with their kids and doing creating at home. So I think natural dyeing as a whole, I think, is growing as sort of an industry. So I'm probably one of many people that do it. It's just how I do mine is completely organic, and the way I make it is obviously made by myself. So I found out that obviously it's a larger community than I realized from lockdown. So it's getting bigger.
That's really interesting. Natasha, what have you discovered through your growth?
I think it's the community I found on social media. So when I first started doing this, I felt completely alone. There was no one I knew that was doing graphic design freelance that that made like a business of it. And only in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen a huge community on Instagram, and it's been a lovely surprise. People that host like co-working sessions on Zoom for those of us that work alone from home by ourselves, and YouTube, and just expanding the social aspect. I never thought that would be a part of my business, but it is, and I love it.
That's a lovely idea. You're all on Zoom. Claudia's asked as well, what percentage discount do you offer wholesalers? So maybe if you could all take this question as well.
I think the normal from what I've seen is at least 50%, 50 to 60% discount for wholesalers usually, from my experience.
I think it depends. I think depending on whether it's sort of a drop ship, or if you're holding the stock yourself, or if you're actually giving it to a shop. So there are variations, like for dropship, it can be anywhere as low as 20 up to 30. And then I think obviously if it's going to be in a shop, they're looking for more around 50%. But if it is sort of more niche brands, you can have some flexibility, because if you're an artisan maker, they do expect you to sort of work on different margins than sort of larger companies.
That's really interesting. Rafaela?
Yes, I agree with Verity. For example, in our industry, margins can be, 60%. Sometimes, wholesaling takes a lot of margin away. So I think when you are a small independent, the buyers don't expect you to have the same rules and apply the same rules as a big industry. So you can play a bit, and sometimes it's about finding in negotiation the price that suits you, depending on how much they're going to order, how frequently, and as Verity said, are you holding stock for them? Do they want 1 week notice? I think there are a number of factors when you're small you can just bring to the table when you negotiate with a buyer.
Great. I think that's all the questions, Emma Sue.
Well, thank you, everybody, our panelists, for giving up your time and coming along today, and all of our audience, thank you so much for coming, and we will be in touch with you and give you all the links to these wonderful businesses, and hope you will shop there. And I myself feel a kind of, I don't know, imagining a little party where we could have invitations from Natasha, and we could have linen from Verity, and we could have lots of lovely chocolate from Brick. So thank you, everybody, so much, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.